Welcome, listeners. This is Sebastian Nothwell interviewing Luna Daye. Hello, Luna.
Hi.
Now, Luna, which of your books are you most excited to talk about today?
I'm always the most excited to talk about the Thraeus saga, which is my epic high fantasy series. I released book 2 last year and I'm currently working on book 3.
And it's a planned 6-book series?
Yeah, at the moment, 6 books, like main books. I do have some kind of secret plans for maybe some novellas, maybe some spin offs, but the main series is going to be 6 books, yeah.
So, what inspired you in that direction? What gets you so excited about it?
I mean, I've always loved like storytelling, even, as young as being able to hold a pen, and I lent more towards fantasy when I got into like secondary school, but then like with most people it kind of just dropped off the radar a little bit and it turned more to like films and things, things like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. But I'm a big softie at heart. I love some romance and I didn't feel like I was getting that in the fantasy. So I was like, I'm just going to write it myself.
That seems to be a common refrain. It's like, I'm not finding the book I want to read, so I guess I have to make it.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like the plan to publish it. It was just something for fun. It was just something to do like in my spare time. And then I think another common thing with us indies is, I had a lot more spare time on my hands when we went through the pandemic. And so I was writing a lot more and, I joined TikTok because that's what everybody did during the pandemic. And I was like, hey, I could indie publish my book. And it spiraled from there.
Awesome. What are you most excited to get to writing in that series? If that's something you can safely reveal.
Yeah, I can. I think so. The way the books have gone so far, book 1 really set the scene, set the tone for the characters because it's 6 main POVs. And then in book 2, some stuff started happening. We got some quite juicy plot points. And then in book 3, it's really going to be exploring kind of character growth, and quite a lot of the characters go through some pretty big changes in their perception of things and how they deal with situations. So it's the start of some pretty serious character arcs, and I'm really excited to get to those and really start like pushing my characters' boundaries.
We do love a good character-driven story.
Absolutely.
So what drives your storytelling overall? What motivates you to write?
I thought about this one. And I really wanted to give you like a really profound, like philosophical answer. But honestly, I started writing them for my own entertainment. And for me, that's really all it is. It's just to entertain other people. If people have a really good experience while they're reading my stories, then I've done my job right. If they have like an emotional response, like that's all I'm here for. There's nothing better than when a reader or a friend of yours reaches out to you and says, "Oh, I've got to this bit and so's just done this, and like I was crying, or I was really angry, or I was swooning." Like that's it for me. Like that's the goal, is to just for people to have a good time when they're reading my stories.
Absolutely. That is always just such a wonderful moment.
Yeah, it's the best.
Do you have a favorite character you've created?
See, if you ask me this answer changes like every time I get asked this. And I really think it depends on whose POV I'm writing at the moment or like what mood I'm in. But at the moment, I'm working with a character called Kane from that series, and he's an assassin. And he's a really wild character to write because, well, obviously, he's an assassin, so he's very morally grey. He really likes to live life on the edge. So, he starts fights, he gambles, he's a womanizer, he's really cocky and arrogant, he's unpredictable. And he's just so much fun to write because I'm quite a sensible person. So, writing through his perspective is a real adventure for me as well. And I've really got to push my own boundaries of like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't do that. But like, he would. So yeah, it's fun to write his character.
It sounds almost cathartic, really, just like
Yeah.
being able to live through this guy who's just going to do basically anything.
Yeah, and it's kind of vicarious because, like, I wouldn't dare do these things in real life, and then to kind of do it in the book is, it's quite an interesting experience. And I think he's one of the characters that's going to go through the biggest arc because at the moment he's been kind of just doing as he's told by, the person who sets his missions and things. And in the last book, we saw him start to kind of question things and be like, what's my part in, the big plan? And, am I really doing this? Like, he wasn't too bothered about killing people because it was, vigilante justice and all that. But now he's really starting to have a bit of a, conscience crisis. And that's really fun to write.
Yeah. It's also like a really useful archetype from a writing perspective because, like, if a scene's kind of dragging, if you don't know where the plot's going to go next, if you need someone to just come in and shake things up,
Yeah.
you want a chaotic little guy.
Yeah, even I don't know what he's going to do sometimes. And there have been scenes where I was adamant it was going to go a certain way with him. And then he just pulls this stunt out of the bag. And I'm like, okay, let's just roll with that and see where it takes us, you know?
Absolutely. What stories inspire you?
Everything. Like, I think everything is a story, you know? It can be other books that I've read, it can be, you know, TV series. I'm also really inspired by just music in general, because, you know, that's stories in a completely different context. And, you know, I can listen to a piece of music and get a whole scene in my head or just, you know, vibes and stuff. So that often inspires me. But yeah, mostly like other books that I read and sort of TV shows and things. And I think, like, oh, I wouldn't do it that way. Like, I shipped these two together, or I really wanted this character to do this thing. And then I'm getting mad because I'm like, well, I would have done it differently. So that's the sort of thing that inspires me. Like, I'm going to do it my way.
There is something to be said for spite motivated writing, or just like consuming a story and being like, it was perfect except for this one thing, and if I could just fix this.
Spite writing. I love that. I don't think it was that like vicious before, but I mean, maybe I'm that petty. I don't know.
I don't think your version is as vicious as my version. I think maybe I go a little far with it, but
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think sometimes it's just, you know, I really like the idea, but, you know, I imagined it going somewhere a little bit different. I mean, we all know how we all hated the ending of Game of Thrones. You know, I'm like, oh, how would I have done that? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
it's that kind of thing. Like, you know, I like the alternate endings and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. There is also, you mentioned music, and I think there is kind of like an unspoken symbiotic relationship between music and books
Mm.
in a way. Because, like, I know for me, I listen to a lot of metal, and so many metal albums and even so many metal like projects and bands are based around extant fantasy novels.
Yeah.
And then in turn, I know so many fantasy novelists who are like, oh yeah, here are all the metal bands that inspire me to write this epic fantasy.
You know what? I love that you just said that. Like, I'm such a metalhead at heart. I mean, I love music in general, like, but metal and rock is where my heart really is. But I also really enjoy kind of like movie soundtracks and, you know, sort of the sort of heavy, hard hitting orchestral pieces and instrumental music. I don't know if you ever watched it. There's a documentary called Headbanger's Journey, and he talks about how the roots of metal actually comes from classical music, because there were those notes that you weren't allowed to play in the Middle Ages and things like that, and it sparks a really visceral reaction in people. And like, that hit the nail on the head for me. Like, it's the feeling that you get from a piece of music that inspires that emotion that then translates into the storytelling.
Absolutely, and visceral is such a good word for it.
Mm.
What is the number one thing you want readers to take away from your books?
So hard.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm really putting the screws to you with these questions.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just the enjoyment of it, you know. I would love for it to be that sort of story where it sticks with somebody and they're thinking about it, you know, a couple of months, couple of years down the line, and go, oh yeah, that book I read by Luna, like, you know, I really enjoyed that, and tell their friends about it. Because we've all got those books. We've all got those books that hold a special place, that had a sort of profound reaction on us when we read them. Like, that's it. I just want people to have a good time.
I mean, don't we all though? Being able to bring that kind of joy into people's lives is just so beautiful.
Yeah, and even just, I mean, it's not even necessarily, oh my God, I'm going to sound awful when I say this.
Not necessarily joy.
It's not even joy. Like, I've had readers message me and go, Luna, are you kidding me with this? Like, I'm so angry right now. Or, oh my gosh, you just made me cry. Like, I can't believe you did that to so-and-so, or I can't believe this happened. And, you know, that's what I crave as an author. You know, I love that. My favorite authors are the ones that do that to me. Like, if I haven't like laughed out loud and swooned and like sobbed my way through it at like 1 a.m. in the evening, like, why did I even bother picking up the book? Do you know what I mean? Like, I live for that visceral reaction, and I want to give that to other people.
Absolutely. I mean, there's joy in catharsis.
Yeah, definitely. Nothing like having a good old cry and then, you know, getting the tissues out and then going back on with your day.
Yeah.
I made the mistake of starting audiobooks last year. Like I hadn't picked them up before. And the first ones I picked up was this really intense emotional series. And I was listening to it while I was at work. I work from home and I was doing my office job. And I got to this really emotional bit and I was just sat there like bawling my eyes out, like couldn't even see my computer screen. I was crying so hard and I messaged an author friend of mine. I was like, seriously, why did you recommend these books to me? I'm trying to work. And I just sat here like,
oh no.
And that was one of my favorite series because I love that, the written word made me feel that strongly, like that emotionally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What are some themes that you love to explore or revisit in your writing?
See, again, I thought this was a tricky one because I think themes can be quite general. So, like I said, I am a big softie. I'm a hopeless romantic. So I do like to include the romance elements of it. And I was looking back over this series and the other series that I'm writing. And the only thing I could come up with that seems to be a recurring theme is I'm a real sucker for the hurt comfort trope.
I mean, we do love hurt comfort in this house. It has to be said.
We do. Yeah. And I realised that all but one book in my, whole backlog includes it in some way or other. And it doesn't even need to be like physical hurt. It can be emotional hurt. And I just love that. The vulnerability of the characters having to open up and trust somebody else to take care of them. It gets me every time. And yeah, I realised I do that quite a bit.
What drew you to your subgenres specifically?
And I think it's like I said, at the time when I first started writing it, I was consuming a lot of standard classic fantasy, sort of the normal, air quotes, epic high fantasy, because I love epic battle scenes. And I love like twisty plots and political intrigue, like sword fights and dragons and magic. And I love all that. But it didn't have any romance in it. Like I wanted people like kissing and, all these epic romances as well. And so, yeah, that's where it all started. And I think that's what I'm going to continue to do because it's what I enjoy the most.
I mean, it seems to be working out for you with 2 multi-book series.
Yeah, the Freya Saga is my baby. That's my number one. I love it. And then the Fae series I started, that was just a bit of fun. I had this idea and I started it in my head and it kind of just took off. Like people seemed to be pretty interested in it. I think it mixed a few sort of genres and sort of trending ideas. So that seemed to do pretty well as well. So I was like, oh, ideal. I'll just keep running both at the same time then.
Do you find that focusing on the lighter by comparison story in the Fae series helps you focus when you do switch back to the high fantasy? Just kind of being able to alternate between the two and refresh yourself?
Yeah, and I think it's needed because, high fantasy is exactly that. And it can be quite heavy in terms of like themes. It certainly has darkness in it. And some of those things can be quite heavy to work with. There's a bit more sort of death and angst and that sort of thing. So actually having that little break and, focusing on something that's a bit lighter, a bit fluffier, it breaks it up and, you're able to kind of deal with all the tough stuff and then like, right, okay, now I just need some fluff for, a little while and then come back to it and with a clearer head.
Yeah. What advice do you have for aspiring authors?
Just go for it. Like, it's the best thing I ever did. Like, it's hard. Like, I can only talk from an indie perspective, but there's so much to learn. It is a straight up learning curve. Like, there's no curve. It's just vertical learning.
It's a sheer cliff face, and we're all just kind of dangling on it.
Yeah, we're just like clawing our way up it in the hope that we don't fall down to the bottom again. But it's so worthwhile. The enjoyment of just doing the writing and, connecting with people, like the community for the indie authors is incredible. And it's not just authors, it's the reader community, it's like artists and fellow creatives. It's so worthwhile. Even if just one person reads your book, it's worth it because it's a creative outlet. It brings you closer to bookish community and it ultimately is just really, really fun. And if you're not having fun, then I don't think you're doing it right. Like it's supposed to be fun and yeah, just go for it. That's all I would say to somebody who's thinking about doing it.
Absolutely. And it really is like the human connection that makes it all worthwhile.
I mean, I've made some incredible friends just in the last couple of years. I mean, I think I only joined TikTok, like I said, in the pandemic, and that was when it really kicked off. So, and, authors and readers and other creatives, artists and things like that. And I talk to these people daily, they're part of my life. It's not just, oh, by the way, I've got this author question. Can you help me out? Oh, they always do. But, we talk about our day-to-day lives and stuff as well. So I've made some incredible friends in the process. And I think everybody needs a bit of that in their lives.
Absolutely. So, Luna, If people want to check out you or your stories, where can they find you?
So I do have my own website. It's just lunadaye.com, and I am available on, unfortunately, only on Amazon at the moment, but I am in KU, and the paperbacks and everything are available on there too, or you can get them direct from me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
No worries. Thanks for having me.